Could you give us a quick background of your career to date and how you got to where you are now?
My parents took me to Sydney, Australia when I was 13 years old. I finished my education in Australia. I joined the civil service as a young man at the age of 16 when I left school, and got bored with that within 18 months and fell into, by accident, the retail motor industry in Sydney. So I worked my way through that organisation over a period of 7 years. So I became one of the youngest sales managers in Australia under General Motors. And I finally, after a couple of visits, came back to the UK and got a role with a Ford organisation in the south of England. And ultimately, I got an opportunity to run a much bigger part of the group in the north of England, up in Merseyside. All this time, really, I'm serving what I would call my apprenticeship of learning about the retail motor industry. But it was a great learning curve of turning a business around in Merseyside in the 1980s, which was losing money, and then turning it into a success. But this was a business that was owned by other people. I was a director, but my ambition was always to run and own my own company. So in the 1989, I successfully managed to do a management buy-in of an existing Ford dealership in the south of England in Essex, and then expanded from there. Ultimately, my vision was to build a business that we would grow multi-brand and ultimately take to a value that would make it ultimately saleable. My ambition was not to run a second generation with my children, was to run a first generation business with the ultimate goal of a trade sale. I had original funding from 3i plc, so it was venture capital. I'm pleased to say that after 10 tough years through the 1990s, I bought out 3i plc. So my family, my wife and I, ended up owning 100% of the shares. So it was our own private company owned by us. And as we got into the 2000s, we grew the business further and multi-branded with Ford, Mazda, Jaguar, Land Rover, Volvo, Seat, Skoda, you name it. I've lost count. Yeah. Many franchises, many brands, many dealerships. We employed 350 people when I brought it through to a sale in 2017. Our turnover was about 200 million a year. And we got a good exit. We sold it to a South African public company who were expanding in the UK. I caught them at the right time. So that's where we got to. Where I'm now is I'm a private investor. I have my own family investment company, and I'm still in the business world.
On your entrepreneurial journey, what do you believe were the biggest turning points or factors, if we can name it that way, in your success?
In my case, I was very focused on building a solid foundation. I was offered in the early days, when we were still a fledgling company, many opportunities to expand early by manufacturers who wanted me to take on franchises. And I politely said, thank you, but no thank you, because I'm still building my foundation. I saw many businesses in the early days, in those days, take on too much too soon, and guess what? They went bust.
On the contrary, what were some of the largest problems or challenges you came across? And what were some of the most effective methods that you implemented to deal with those challenges?
Well, I started my business when I did the management buy-in in 1989, that within 6 months, we were into a recession in the UK. My market opportunity dropped 45% in the first 18 months. Well, my business plan was saying that we're going to start here and move up. I didn't factor in that we were going to see a market drop by 45%. Nobody could have known that. So obviously I had to recalibrate my thinking. So I had to reorganize my overheads, my structure, and obviously I had to really put a laser focus on cash flow to guide us through that difficult period. When I was seeing other businesses go bust, we hung in there. Obviously building a really highly trained and dedicated team behind me, people who really were passionate about the business, as passionate as I was. And of course our business was all about delivering high levels of customer satisfaction alongside providing the product. We needed to show that we were different from other people in our industry, that we were better in terms of delivering for the customer. And most of all, focusing on everything that's within our control. You can't focus on things that are outside your control. I couldn't do anything about the recession. I couldn't do anything about the economy. That's down to other forces. So I concentrate on what's under my nose and within my control. I think if you do that, you can manage your way through those difficult periods.
Do you suffer from any form of stress? And if so, how do you cope with that?
Of course, any entrepreneur who says that they don't get some form of stress aren't telling the truth. Of course you get stressed, but you have to cope with it. The biggest thing I think about entrepreneurship, people who are trying to be successful, is that we're driven not only by the passion to be successful, but fear of failure. I was always frightened of failure. I was not going to fail. When you're frightened of failure, you don't let it happen, because you make sure you do the right things to ensure that you avoid failure. You can't be successful at everything, and there will be some elements of failure. In my case, if I'd have failed, I'd have lost the whole shooting match. So I had no choice. I've got to win my way through that. Obviously, I was backed by a wonderful family, my wife and my young children at that time. And that was obviously part of my drive and passion. But I also had the most inspirational mother. Every entrepreneur will probably have that kind of figure in their lives. My mother I could sit down with when I was at my darkest moments and sit with her and tell her of my troubles. And she was so wise in advising me to calm down, you can do it. And the words I'll never forget, you can do it, my son.
What's one piece of advice you would give to any entrepreneurs looking to scale up their business?
Well, first of all, obviously, if you've got a solid product in terms of whatever you do, in my case, obviously the motor industry, you've got to build a solid foundation. So you've got to learn to walk before you can run. If you overstretch too early, you're going to potentially run into trouble. I'm all for ambition, but ambition needs to be in a measured and sensible way. If you employ people, you've got to lead a motivated team, because you can't do it on your own. You need talented and motivated people around you, and that's the job of the leader, is to focus on that. As I said earlier, you've got to focus on what's within your control, and you've got to have a laser focus. If you're producing revenue and you're trying to scale up, then you need to look at your margin control and your cash management, because cash is king. The reason that businesses fail generally is they run out of cash. So cash management is absolutely essential. And I would say every day when you get out of bed and go into work, that you've got to be fired up and ready to go.
And what do you believe the future looks like, both on a personal and business level? Do you have any targets you're going towards?
Very importantly, of course, I'm on the advisory board of E2E, which I'm very proud of. I'm working within an organisation that is inspirational in introducing entrepreneurs to entrepreneurs. That connectivity is so important. I wish I had that E2E when I was driving my business 20, 30 years ago. Because being a business leader sometimes can be a very lonely life, because you've got to make decisions at the top. And apart from talking to my mother, who else do you talk to? Well, E2E provides that opportunity. You can talk to other business leaders in very diverse fields. And I love that part of it. I really do. Coming out of one industry that I was focused on for my career, and then being able to meet people from so many diverse businesses and business models. And that's what I want to continue to do, and that keeps me motivated.